One of the things as you get into the world of laser engraving you may find is those things are kind of smelly. Hey everybody, my name is Sam and welcome back to Samcraft. In today's video, I'm going to be doing an unboxing, first look, and overall review of the Ortur's brand new enclosure for their laser engravers. Let's go. I'm going to make this a very laid-back video. We're going to go ahead and unbox this thing, take a look, and I will be learning right along with you guys what exactly all is included, what it looks like, and we'll check this thing out together. So let's go. Looks like we have an instruction booklet and user manual. Let's see if this top part is a tray that lifts off. I think it is. Yeah, so this top foam tray will lift off and it'll help me from not having to take everything out right now. Alright, first impressions, this is a lot more assembly than what I was expecting given the size of the box. I was expecting at least the carcass to be assembled, but that is not the case. Every single thing here looks like it's disassembled, but we'll go through the instruction book and go ahead and put this thing together. You have to put the laser in this, and this mounts with the laser itself. Alright, right offhand, first thing to note with this enclosure, you have to use it with your Laser Master 2 Pro, and you have to assemble it and attach it to your laser. So that means I've got to get my laser out and, well, okay, it's already out, but bring it over and remove it from its wooden backer board that I put the laser on. From what I can tell, even though I've just looked at it briefly, I'm going to be attaching this enclosure to the actual laser itself. They will become one unit when this is all said and done. It does not appear that I'll be able to take the laser out for the enclosure, or the enclosure will stand on its own without it. So, FYI, you are going to be marrying your laser to this enclosure. So, just so you know. Step 1, front of the laser, we're going to be installing some standoff brackets. I like how all the hardware is in individual little bags. That's nice. And they do look like they are snap lock, ziplock style bags. Here's a look at the front left and right standoff brackets. They're kind of shaped like the number 7. They have a little bend. You use these small little M5 bolts and little T-nuts, and they slide in the tracks from the bottom, and they go to the left and right of the laser to attach to the enclosure. Here's a look at the right and left connecting plates. They are loose for now. I don't know where they're going to line up on the enclosure, so they're just barely snug and held into place on the left and right rails. Next up is to install the back mounting plates. They look like this, kind of like a large letter T, and they both go on this back rail towards the back wall of the enclosure. Alright, with the right, left, and rear brackets mounted to the frame of the laser itself, the next thing to do is go ahead and put on the rear panel. It is the one with a circular hole for the exhaust fan cut out, and it is gray. Here's a look at the back panel. It is the one with the hole in it for the exhaust port. You just use 2 machine screws attached through the panel into the brackets you installed, and that holds it in place. This is also where leaving everything loose is very important, so you're able to slide the brackets around and get all the holes lined up. Okay, I've already messed up, but I want to share with you guys my mess up. These back brackets both the machine screws don't go in this rear rail. You put one in the left and back, one in the right and back. So it locks them into place and makes them far enough that the panel actually can attach. So I need to remove one of the screws out of each of these and attach it to these side rails. Back panel is installed. Next thing to do is to attach the right side panel. This right side panel is attached with 2 screws here in the corner with the back one, and then 1 screw goes through and into the bracket you installed at the front of the laser. 23 minutes into the assembly and I'm on step number 4. Heaven help us. After you've installed the right side panel, now you install the left side panel. The left side panel only has 1 bolt and nut that attaches at this top corner. You'll see as you put this together there is a gap at the bottom, and then it has 1 bolt that attaches up through the bracket towards the front of the laser. I can already tell you, be prepared to either be ready to walk around this thing and move around a whole lot, or have a lot of space to spin it, because I'm having to move this thing a lot. So give yourself plenty of room when you're doing this. Alright, we have the rear, left, and right side panels attached. Next step is to add this little, they call it an avoidance slot. It goes here in this back left corner as you're facing the front of the laser, left side. And this is where your drag link, your chain, is able to stick out behind the enclosure and fit within its avoidance slot. Interesting. Okay, the next thing is to install what they call the base plate. They are these shiny aluminum colored flexible plates. There are 2 of them. They go left to right on the bottom of the machine down below, which I guess I'll just pick it up and insert it from the bottom. It's a little odd that you do it this step, but I guess with it being open at the bottom, it's hopefully not going to be an issue. Again, another instance where you're picking this thing up repeatedly. Alright, there we go. Once you've got the 2 plates in there, they each have 4 holes that line up with the left and right panels, and you use more of the M5x6 screws with hex nuts to lock them into place. We have our base plates installed. The nuts and everything are snug. They're not locked down tight. I want to make sure I still have enough flexibility with this as I assemble it, but I will always go back and tighten everything up before we're done. The next thing to install is the front damper plate. That is this guy. Goes down there up front and separates the laser from the control board. Alright, at this point is when I need to take off this little 3D printed holder for the focusing cylinder that they give you with the laser. So that guy's got to go. So there's enough clearance for this front damper panel to fit in behind your E-stop, and your wires will still remain routed where they need to go, and you don't need to loosen the control board unless it needs to wiggle left and right to line up with your damper board. Perhaps in that case it would be best to loosen this so you have a little bit of wiggle room so this front plate fits into space better. It's going to be fun on this front corner. It's getting really crowded up here. This enclosure includes a small little fan plus an exhaust port. You want to go ahead and install these next onto this back panel. You want to make sure you feed the power cord for your fan out through the enclosure before you install it. Also, take note of the direction of the fan. The fan is not labeled with an arrow on which way the airflow goes. I just plugged it up to test it with the included AC adapter, and for this fan, the side where you see the wires faces out. This is the way the airflow travels. Be sure to check yours to make sure. You don't want to put this in and assume everything's great and then end up just smoking yourself out of your workshop. So, in my case, I'm going to put this side, the side where you see the wires, facing out, towards the outside of the enclosure. You install the fan using these long M4, they're called cup head screws, or, recessed socket head screws. These are the longer 35 millimeters. This is what you install through the dust port, through the enclosure, through the fan, and then add the nuts on the back of to hold all of this together, kind of as an exhaust port sandwich. With the exhaust port and fan installed, next panel to put on is the top one. It's called the shell cover, It is this flat one with a little bit of turn at the front. The bend goes towards the front of the enclosure, and it is installed using more of the screws and nuts you've been using for most of this assembly. In this step, all you want to do is install the 4 along the back. You don't do the fronts because there are hinge connecting plates that need to be attached up here next. So for this step, just doing the 4 along the back side of this panel. Next up, you're going to be using these kind of angled and tabbed brackets. These are the hinge connecting plate support brackets. They go on the left and the right side. They're bent in a way that they're only going to mount on one side or the other. For this angled bracket, you're going to be installing 6 bolts, 2 here, 1 here on the top, and then 2 and 1 on the side. Do not install these 2 here. This is for your hinge, but otherwise you're going to do 6, 3 on the top, 3 on the side. And they thread right into the bracket itself, so you don't need to use any of the nuts for this. Next step is to pop in these plastic handles on the sides. This allows you to still be able to grab it, but keeps the smoke and fumes from escaping. You follow that up by installing the 2 hinges on the top. These are little black plastic hinges. One goes here, the other goes on this side. And they get installed with more of the hex nuts and bolts.
It ain't rained all day.
Yeah, it's not either. It's not here either. What the heck?
It's the way it goes, man. It looks like rain, but it ain't rain.
Figured. Rock and roll. I think we are ready to lock these things down now. Well, it took an hour and a half. Alright guys, a couple of hours later and this thing is done. Assembly has been completed, all the hardware is locked down tight, and this has turned out to be really, really cool. So, let's give you guys a tour of the Ortur. Right up front, as you can see, it still retains access to your control board, your emergency stop switch, and everything for the Laser Master 2 Pro. It does exclude your flame alarm from the enclosure, but honestly, that flame alarm is glitchy, and I had disabled it in my G-code settings flashboard a long time ago. So, I'm not concerned about losing that sensor on the inside of the cabinet. Also up front, you have a viewing glass here. This is the orange. It is the laser plastic protective kind of, buffer of security. You got your plastic here for viewing, and you also have a taller window up top. I like the fact that the case is slanted at the front. It's not just a giant box. It does add to be a little more streamlined and honestly maximizes the space and efficiency. You still have access to your belt tighteners here on the left and over here on the right. So that is awesome because remember, when you put this thing together, your laser and this enclosure become one. So the fact that they leave or have thought of far enough ahead in the future that you're going to have access to your belts without taking any of these panels off, really good. Good thinking. The handle here is nice and wide. It is a D-style handle, and you're able to grab it and lift the lid. Speaking of the lid, these 2 gas shocks give plenty of support. The added bracing of the lid does not make it feel flimsy at all. You can easily close it and grab it from one corner. There is, a little bit of flex, but honestly, it's nothing that I am afraid that I'm going to bend the metal or mess it up in the event I grab it from a corner to lift it or close it. That being said, this handle being front and center is great, and really that's what we're going to be using the most. Inside, there's not a whole lot to speak about. The gas shocks are great. They are adjustable as far as the brackets here on the lid, so you're able to get those lined up and trued correctly. Otherwise, it's just an enclosure, so there's not much to expect on the inside. That being said, this enclosure screams add LED lights, and that's something I want to do. Not only for a cool factor for video and any other kind of work, but also just to have the inside well lit as I'm working on things. And why not? If you have a laser and an enclosure, you gotta have LEDs. So that's something I'll add later. Here you can also see at the very back, there is our exhaust fan. That has its own separate power supply that plugs into the wall. It has an inline switch. So the fact that it's not hardwired to the laser is, I guess, something to know. It's just something to know that you're going to need an additional outlet to power that exhaust fan back there. It would be cool if they could have somehow worked it into the board circuitry or the power supplies of the laser, but given this is an add-on, an additional item, I guess I can understand the fact that it has its own power supply. Over here on the side of the enclosure, these plastic handle inserts are nice. They make for an easy way to carry and transport this enclosure without cutting your hands, but also closing up the system so no fumes exhaust. As far as carrying this thing, it is relatively lightweight. It doesn't add a whole lot of heft to the actual machine, so it is still portable in a weight carrying capacity at least. Here on the back of the enclosure, you can see the exhaust port for the fan. This enclosure does come with the hose and everything. I just don't have it hooked up right now. So you're able to run this out of your shop or into an air filter or whatever else things you can kind of come up with for mitigating or handling your fume extraction. Right below the port is the power cord for the fan. I just have it tucked in right there for now, but this is what runs to the AC adapter switch and everything separately to power the fan. Over here on the right side of the enclosure, nothing else to really speak of. There is a handle here for carrying, and then that brings us back around to the front. I'm not a fan of the two-piece base of this enclosure, only because you're going to need a flat, good surface to sit this on. Otherwise, the bottom panels will flex, bend, and could cause problems with material. That being said, I plan on cutting a piece of plywood or sacrificial material to lay inside this enclosure to act as the base for things that I want to engrave. Total time for assembly for me, as I was also doing video work, was right about 2 hours. I don't think that it'll be that long for most people to assemble it, but I would hands down be at least expecting an hour, if not an hour and a half. There is quite a bit of assembly to this, as you guys have saw. The instructions are okay. They do show you everything you need to do, but they are very small pictures in that book, and they don't have any kind of textual descriptions. So it is a little bit of a guessing game, trial and error, and kind of, you know, working through it on your own. So from that aspect, the assembly instructions are a little bit lacking, but given that this is a product that is made international and geared towards an international audience, I do understand the logistics of having to translate text versus just giving pictures for assembly. That being said, I still was able to put it together, so you guys probably could put it together too. Just take your time and, you know, walk away if you have to, or just persevere. That is the general overview. Let's go ahead and put this on my laser station, which honestly, it's going to be bigger than my station. This enclosure is larger than the laser itself, so it's going to be sticking off my table some, but whatever. Let's go ahead and put it in place. We'll hook up our dust port and fire this thing up. Okay, there's not really any firing up of the enclosure. We'll fire up the laser, make sure it works, and maybe I'll do a test cut and we'll kind of see it in action in there. I'll go ahead and run through a test job here to test out the enclosure and kind of give you guys a little laser time on this video. So I have a wooden disc here that I'm going to go ahead and mark the center with this center finding gauge. This allows me to set the origin dead center on this coaster, and the tape will act as a good masking layer to allow the laser to burn through and hopefully reduce the amount of charring that we have from engraving the wood. So Let's go ahead and load this up in the machine, set our origin, and run our first job with this new enclosure. It's also going to be cool to use the fan to see exactly how much smoke comes out of the case versus disappears out the window magically and out of the workshop. I guess since we have the enclosure now and it's got its own little case, we can take the little shield off. Alright, we're going to turn on our new exhaust fan and we'll go ahead and start this job. Alright, that one finished right offhand. One, my power is way too low for that job. I can't even see the laser did anything. But two, I guess that's about it. I was going to say I don't smell any fumes, but it didn't really look like it worked. So, let's leave everything in place and just adjust our settings in Lightburn to up the power of the laser. Alright, here's a look at it straight off the machine after, honestly, multiple attempts. This is how you learn. This is how you figure out the power needed for this with that and all that stuff. So let's pull off our masking tape, see if we have anything below it to show. And, kind of, sort of. Looks like Vader needs a little bit of cleanup, and he's kind of lost some details there. So, that being said, let's throw this thing back in here without masking tape and see if we can get a better Vader. Better Vader. Alright, while this guy's running, I'll give you some of my thoughts here. The exhaust fan is really not loud, but it seems like it does perfectly fine. That thing is in there smoking, literally. I don't really smell anything. I'm looking at the gaps, and I don't see any smoke coming out of the gaps. So, awesome. The enclosure is working, the exhaust fan is working, and honestly, that's it. That's the reason you would get something like this, is to enclose your laser so it's safer in your shop, but most importantly, with the exhaust fume, to get the fumes out. And that's great. 100%, this thing's doing its job. Outside of those two factors, obviously, it is really cool to have my laser in an enclosure. This is going to help it stay a lot cleaner. I'm not going to have as much ambient dust fall on the machine, and it should help prolong the life of the sensitive electronics in a workshop environment. I also definitely like this safety feature. So if my two children are in the shop or around when I'm working, even though they wear laser glasses anyway, this is just an extra layer of protection to protect them and me and just be safe. So anything that can improve safety and comfort and ease of use is totally worth it in my opinion. Alright, let's see how Vader worked out this time. One thing real quick, as I open the case, I could still smell a little bit of exhaust, so if you're ultra sensitive for that, you may want to let the fan run for a couple of minutes before you open it. That being said, there was no smoke, it wasn't like a cloud billowed out, it was just a little bit of noticeable whiffage going on here. So, Vader turned out pretty good, all things considered. The second go around without any masking tape looks pretty good. This was 5,000 millimeters per inch, no, 5,000 millimeters per minute at 100% laser power. That was just the initial burn for this, and I think it turned out okay. It is deep enough to where you can feel it, but it is not so deep that, you know, it caught on fire. So, good. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the assembly and initial use and overview of the Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro enclosure plus exhaust fume extraction. If you're interested, there's links to this down below, along with the laser itself and everything else. I am 100% pleased with Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro. It is the workhorse laser engraver of my workshop and my small business. So, from Samcraft, 2 thumbs up on that. My initial take from this enclosure is it is just as good. Even though it is a lot of assembly and, you know, kind of thinner metal pieces, when it is all said and done, fully assembled and put together as is, it becomes a really nice, hard, rock-solid shell, and I think it's going to last very long, be very durable, and be well worth it in the end. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them for me down below. Otherwise, take care, and I'll see you guys next time in the workshop.